Welcome to the channel. Today, I want to take you back to some older clips of the Duggars where they are actually acknowledging that they were making choices not in the best interest of their family. It is a deep dive into the hidden reality behind their public testimony from 2009. So, without further ado, let's get started with the video. I want to show you some older clips where the family is acknowledging that they were doing things not in the best interest of their children or their household. These clips are from around 2009 and are labeled as a personal testimony given at a family conference for a specific religious institute. At the time, this was one of the first times they had ever been keynote speakers, and they had the whole family on display. They had the kids singing and playing violins, creating this public image of a perfect large brood. When the parents got up on stage to share their testimony, it became clear that they had been approached to do a documentary series when the mother was pregnant with her 15th child. What is truly haunting is that this was filmed at the exact same time that the oldest son was doing terrible things to his sisters. The subsequent series followed while there were active investigations by police and social services. Even though the police didn't charge the son at that time, it became a juvenile court case to manage what was happening to the sisters. Despite the investigation, the parents chose to go on television. The mother even admitted during a public conference that when they were first approached for the show, she wasn't sure if it was the right time because the family was in a dark valley. Their son was harming their other children. Yet they went on TV and made that son a focal point because he was articulate. They claimed to bring the children into the decision-making process, but it was no real choice. The father wanted the show, so they did the show. I am sharing this to highlight that they weren't necessarily hiding the truth. They were just speaking in code. By the time the mother publicly said the family was going through something dark, there were already posts on the internet from former church members outing the truth. As early as 2007, people who knew the family were posting exactly what the son was doing. The entire image presented on the show was a facade. The mother wasn't managing the home or the education the way she claimed. The older children were raising the younger ones while she didn't cook, clean, or teach. They knew the truth was out there, and they worked incredibly hard to cover it up to keep the money flowing. The father knew the show was his primary way to support the family, so he had to keep the grift going. There is also a significant aspect regarding the mother's mental state. After the birth of her 7th child, she describes what can only be called a mental breakdown. She spoke about feeling columns of inadequacy and unworthiness, yet claiming that God wanted to use them. She told her children that they shouldn't be ashamed or proud, but should realize they are nothing without divine help. As they approached that first show, she admitted there was a brokenness in their hearts. Her speeches are often very rehearsed. She tells the same stories with the same emotional cues and fake humility for decades. She admitted they were broken and could barely move one foot in front of the other, which is an incredibly odd time to put children on a national television show. What they actually needed was professional counseling and to have the son removed from the home. The mother needed help for postpartum depression, which seemed to decline with every subsequent pregnancy. Instead, she obeyed her husband's demands to do the show, believing it was ordained by God. In her circles, when they talk about divine principles, they are often referring to a specific leader's man-made rules designed to recruit for their organization. They all knew what the son was doing, but the family was used as a tool for the cult. In another talk from 2013, she described her breakdown in a laundry room. She talked about surrendering and crying out for rescue, claiming she heard a voice telling her to praise through the mess. She promotes this idea that crying out to God will deliver literal miracles, like someone showing up to do the laundry. This is a dangerous teaching because it feeds into religious delusions, especially for someone suffering from untreated postpartum depression, which can lead to psychosis. She was completely overwhelmed with 7 children, unable to keep up with any of the daily tasks, yet she went on to have 12 more. She couldn't do it, which is why the older kids had to step in. She was brainwashed into believing she had to have a child every year. Women in this culture do not get help for mental health, they don't see doctors or therapists, and they don't use medication. In various legal filings, it was revealed that none of the daughters ever saw a licensed therapist after being molested. They have never dealt with their trauma because they are told the only answer is to go to God, while the mother's mental health remained untreated. She continued to train other women in the group, telling them it was her duty to guide them. She gave disturbing advice about wives being obedient to their husbands in all things, tying a woman's salvation directly to her submission. This creates a conflicting belief system where a woman is told she has a relationship with God, but that relationship is actually filtered through her husband's authority. If the husband fails or acts ungodly, the wife is told she simply must be more perfect and pray for his restoration. This system ensures that women stay trapped, believing that their obedience is the only way to heaven. The most sinister part is how the children are taught incorrect definitions to help cover up crimes. They are taught that tattling or gossip includes sharing private information even if it is true. The mother instilled the idea that exposing the truth with a design to hurt is wrong. They memorized definitions that protected the family's image over the safety of the individuals. The daughters were taught to work out little grievances privately, which effectively silenced them from reporting serious issues to anyone who could actually help. They were trained to believe that exposing evil deeds was a sign of a bad heart attitude. These definitions come directly from the cult leader, who redefined slander to mean destroying someone's credibility with damaging facts. In the real world, slander refers to false statements. In their world, telling the truth is considered slander if it makes the perpetrator look bad. This was a calculated effort by the cult leader to silence his own staff and control the narrative after his own family members were exposed for misconduct. These children grow up learning how to lie and protect their good name at all costs. Their education is so subpar that they don't even know the proper meanings of the words they use. The father continues this cover-up because the system benefits him. It protects his reputation and allows his scheme to continue. He has created a family environment where speaking the truth is seen as a sin that could send you to hell. He views himself in a godlike position, often referring to himself as a prophet. He uses non-disclosure agreements to lock people in, modeling the exact behavior of the cult leader he follows. This situation is the result of brainwashing a spouse, keeping her constantly pregnant, and denying her mental health care. It leads to a state of religious OCD and compulsive religiosity that is truly obsessive and delusional. It is an illness fueled by terrible beliefs and a total lack of treatment for trauma. That is the reality behind the image they presented to the world for so many years. The long-term effects of this environment are now becoming visible as the adult children try to navigate a world they were never prepared for. When you spend your entire childhood being told that your motive is the most important part of any statement, you lose the ability to speak plain facts. These adult children often struggle with a form of hypervigilance, constantly checking their own hearts for evil seeds instead of acknowledging the objective reality of their upbringing. The psychological grip of the umbrella of authority is hard to break because it links every action to eternal consequences. To disagree with the father is not just a family dispute, it is a rebellion against God himself. This is the leverage the father uses to maintain control even as the children move out and start their own families. He has positioned himself as the gatekeeper of their spiritual well-being. The mother's testimony about her mental health is particularly revealing because it shows how the group treats physical and neurological issues as spiritual failings. Postpartum depression is a medical condition, yet she was taught to treat it with sacrifices of praise. By denying her medical intervention, the system ensured she remained in a state of fuzzy, compliant exhaustion. A woman who is well-rested, mentally healthy, and supported by a community of equals might start to question why she is doing all the work while the men make all the decisions. But a woman who is constantly pregnant, sleep-deprived, and told that her sadness is a sin will be much easier to manage. This is a calculated suppression of the female members of the group. The father's claim to be a prophet is the final layer of his control. If he is a prophet, then his words are beyond reproach. He can change the rules, redefine language, and demand absolute loyalty without ever having to justify himself. This is the hallmark of a cult leader. He has successfully recreated the cult structure within the walls of his own home, making his family the primary cell of the organization. The children are raised to be recruiters, and the women are raised to be the support system for those recruiters. The entire grift, as it has been called, relies on the world seeing a version of the family that does not exist. When the truth finally broke through the surface, the reaction of the family was not one of repentance, but a further retreat into the protection of the cult's rules. They doubled down on the idea that those who spoke out were slanderers and gossipers. They used the very definitions they had memorized as children to delegitimize the victims, the sons. Behavior was framed as a mistake or a lapse, while the act of reporting that behavior was framed as a malicious attack on the family. This inversion of morality is what allows abuse to persist for generations. The mother's advice to talk sweet and be respectful is a code for never raising your voice against injustice. It is a way to weaponize kindness against the truth. If you are angry about what was done to you, you are told you are not being sweet or chaste in your thoughts. This effectively robs the survivors of their right to be outraged. The focus on restoring the perpetrator to a right relationship with God always comes at the expense of the victim's justice. The perpetrator gets a path to redemption within the church, while the victims are told to be discreet and keep the family secrets. This system is designed by men, for men, to protect men. The father's insistence on non-disclosure agreements and legal control over his adult children's lives is the ultimate proof that this is a business and a power structure, not a ministry. He is managing a brand, and that brand requires the total compliance of everyone involved. The religious language is just the packaging. Underneath it is a standard model of high control abuse. The mother's role in this is both as a victim and an enforcer. She has been broken by the system, yet she uses her platform to break others in the same way. It is a cycle of trauma that masks itself as a cycle of blessing. The dark valleys she mentions were not acts of God. They were the direct result of the choices made by the parents to prioritize their image over their children's lives. They walked into the spotlight with a predator in their home, and they did it for the money and the influence. There is no grace in covering up crimes, and there is no humility in lying to the public. The reality of their lives is found in the court records and the stories of those who finally managed to escape the umbrella. It is a story of a family that was used as a billboard for a dangerous ideology and the heavy price that the children had to pay for a good name that was built on a foundation of secrets. The compulsive nature of their religion is a survival mechanism. They have to believe it is all true, because if it is not, then the pain they endured was for nothing. But as more information comes to light, the cracks in the facade are impossible to ignore. The testimony they gave in 2009 was not a story of victory, it was a confession disguised as a sermon, and the world is finally starting to understand the difference. This systemic manipulation creates a reality where the individual's voice is completely silenced by the group's collective survival instinct. When the father claims the title of prophet, he isn't just making a spiritual claim, he is setting a legal and social boundary that no one within the family is allowed to cross. By controlling the definitions of truth and slander, he ensures that the internal mechanics of the family remain hidden from the outside world. This is the core of the grift, presenting a polished divine image while the actual structure is built on the suppression of trauma and the denial of basic human rights. The children, now adults, are left to pick up the pieces of a childhood that was marketed as a miracle but experienced as a prison. They are the ones who must now decide whether to continue the cycle of silence or to finally speak the truth without the filter of their father's authority. The mother, too, remains a tragic figure in this narrative, caught between her own untreated pain and the role she was forced to play as the face of a perfect household. Her laundry room breakdown was a genuine moment of human suffering that was co-opted by a system that refuses to let anyone be truly human. As the public narrative shifts and the legal documents continue to surface, the facade of the happy musical family is being replaced by the reality of a high-control group that valued its brand more than its children. The legacy of this family is not one of faith, but of the immense cost of maintaining a secret in the digital age. It serves as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked authority and the way religious language can be used to mask the most profound betrayals. The world is finally seeing that the dark valleys they spoke of were not spiritual trials, but the predictable outcomes of a culture that prioritizes the patriarch over the person. In the end, the truth cannot be redefined by a cult leader or hidden behind a sweet voice. It remains a persistent, objective reality that eventually demands to be heard.